Okay. Today I'll tell you the story of the Polar Express. Now this is the story as it is written in the book. Now the book, as you may know, is much different than the movie. So you're going to be here for the movie?
Yes.
Good. You can compare and contrast and then write an essay afterwards about how one is different than the other. Okay? So we'll start with the story. On Christmas Eve, many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I did not rustle the sheets. I breathed slowly and silently. I was listening for a sound a friend of mine said I'd never hear, the ringing bells of Santa's sleigh. There is no Santa, my friend had insisted, but I knew he was wrong. Late that night, I did hear sounds, but not of ringing bells. From outside, I heard the sounds of hissing steam and squeaking metal. I looked through the window and saw a train standing perfectly still in front of my house. It was wrapped in an apron of steam. Snowflakes fell lightly around it. The conductor stood at the open door of one of the cars. He pulled a large pocket watch out of his vest and looked up at my window. I put on my slippers and robe and tiptoed downstairs and out the door. The conductor cried out, "All aboard!" I ran up to him. He asked, "Are you coming?" "Where?" I asked. He said, "Why, to the North Pole, of course. This is the Polar Express." So I took his outstretched hand and he helped me aboard. The train was filled with children, all dressed in their pajamas and nightgowns. We sang Christmas carols and ate candy with nougat centers as white as snow. We drank hot cocoa that was as thick and rich as melted chocolate bars. Outside, the lights of the towns and villages flickered in the distance as the Polar Express raced northward. Soon, there were no more lights to be seen. We traveled through cold, dark woods where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from our train. As the train thundered north, we climbed mountains so high it seemed as if we would scrape the moon. But the Polar Express never slowed down. Faster and faster we ran along, over hill and through valley, like a train on a roller coaster. The mountains turned into hills, the hills to snow-covered plains. We crossed the barren desert of ice, the great polar ice cap. Lights appeared in the distance. It looked like the lights of a strange ocean liner sailing on a frozen sea. "There," said the conductor, "is the North Pole." The North Pole. It was a huge city, standing alone at the top of the world, filled with factories where every Christmas toy was made. At first, we saw no elves. "They're gathering at the center of the city," the conductor told us. "That is where Santa will give the first gift of Christmas." "Who will receive the first gift?" we all asked. The conductor said, "He will choose one of you." "Look," said one of the children, "the elves." Outside we saw hundreds of elves. As our train drew near the center of the North Pole, we slowed to a crawl. So crowded were the streets with Santa's helpers. When the Polar Express could go no further, we stopped, and the conductor led us outside. We pressed through the crowd to the edge of a large open circle. In front of us stood Santa's sleigh. The reindeer were excited and pranced and paced, ringing the silver bells that hung from their harnesses. It was a magical sound, like nothing I'd ever heard. Across the circle, the elves moved apart and Santa Claus appeared. The elves cheered wildly. Santa marched over to us and pointing a finger at me, said, "Let's have this fellow here." He jumped into a sled. The conductor handed me up. I sat on Santa's knee, and he asked, "Now, what would you like for Christmas?" I knew I could have anything that I could imagine. But the thing I wanted most for Christmas was not inside Santa's giant bag. What I wanted more than anything was one silver bell from Santa Claus's sleigh. When I asked Santa, he smiled. Then he gave me a hug and told an elf to cut a bell from a reindeer's harness. The elf tossed it up. Santa stood and, holding the bell high above, cried out, "The first gift of Christmas!" A clock struck midnight as the elves roared their approval. Santa handed the bell to me, and I stuck it in my bathrobe pocket. Then the conductor helped me down from the sleigh. Santa called out the reindeer's name and cracked his whip. The team charged forward and climbed into the air. Santa circled once above us and then disappeared into the cold, dark polar sky. As soon as we were back inside the Polar Express, the other children asked to see the bell. I reached into my pocket, but the only thing I felt was a hole. I had lost the silver bell from Santa Claus's sleigh. "Let's hurry outside and look for it," one of the children said. But the train gave a sudden lurch and started moving. We were on our way home. It broke my heart to lose the bell. When the train came to my house, I sadly left the other children. I stood in my doorway and waved goodbye. The conductor said something from the moving train, but I couldn't understand him. "What?" I yelled out. He cupped his hands around his mouth. "Merry Christmas!" he shouted. The Polar Express let out a loud blast of its whistle and sped away. On Christmas morning, my sister Sarah and I unwrapped all our presents. And just when it seemed as if everything had been unwrapped, Sarah found one small box behind the tree. It had my name on it. Inside was the silver bell. There was a note. "Found this on the seat of my sleigh. Fix that hole in your pocket. Signed, Mr. C." I shook the bell. It made the most beautiful sound my sister and I had ever heard. But my mother said, "Oh, that's too bad." "Yes," said my father, "it's broken." When I had shaken the bell, my parents had not heard a sound. At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but over the years it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found there was one Christmas when she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe. Thanks for being here. It's good to have an audience when I tell a story.